Today to welcome my longtime dear friend and colleague, Tracy Toon Spencer. And Tracy and I are going to talk about our attitudes and our beliefs about perimenopause and menopause and how they impact our lives and our symptoms. So welcome, Tracy. I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and if you'd like, maybe about your own journey through perimenopause and menopause.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited. Marjorie and I know each other from the yoga world. We went through some teacher training together and mentorship. And I was newly remarried when I went through the teacher training, remarried at 35 years old. And so went through a lot of hormone treatments to have kids at that age. And became a life coach and a yoga teacher simultaneously. And because of my fertility challenges, I decided to focus my niche of life coaching and yoga instruction with women who were also struggling to conceive. So the focus of my work for about 10 years was that, and I completed my family and began shortly afterward to go into perimenopause. I don't know if it was the hormone treatments of fertility that made my menopause maybe come a little bit earlier, but Marjorie and I were just talking about how challenging it can be to have motherhood and having young children and having perimenopausal symptoms sort of colliding in our mid 40s, which was the case for me when I had my second child. So I definitely understand and empathize about all the symptoms that can come up. And as we were talking about this call and talking about the work that I do now, I really, really love still working with women, and especially working with women who are turning their attention more inward toward themselves. And how we were talking about menopause is actually kind of a clarion call from your body where your energy starts to be turned more inward. And so as we were talking about this potential opportunity of menopause, Marjorie was like, I have to have you on. We have to talk about this. So yeah, I'm really, my focus of my work right now is really on thinking about how we relate to ourselves and to our bodies and to one another, and looking at the patterns in our relationships and how those patterns are kind of a thread that we can follow through to understand ourselves better. So when I was talking about my relationship to my body as I was going through the hot flashes and the night sweats of perimenopause, I was really thinking of them as just like a terrible nuisance. And there was almost like a catastrophizing that was happening, because it was like, oh my God, I'm feeling one coming on. This is going to be terrible. This is awful. So my attitude was really one of resistance and of rejection and of like kind of panic, because I thought, how long is this going to go on for? Instead of just staying present with it. So I felt that I was able to shift my attitude, I think after about a year of having symptoms. And part of it was the training that I was going through, which was helping me to think about my relationship with my body, and how was I treating my body as a nuisance, as I kind of had throughout my entire life, because I always thought about my period as being a nuisance, and any kind of ache or pain that I had. My infertility was just sort of a nuisance. Like, why is my body performing for me right now the way I want it to? And so my training with the modality that I'm practicing now is really about trying to help people understand how they relate to one thing is potentially how they're relating to everything, and trying to really just to improve that relationship.
It's so fascinating, and thank you for that. And I remember you used that word nuisance. And you and I have been in the health and wellness space for a couple of decades. That's how long we know one another, which is crazy.
I know.
And
we're that old, Marjorie.
Right, we're that old. And Tracy, I remember when Tracy was pregnant with her oldest son, who is a senior in high school now. So
yeah.
This idea of the body as a nuisance. And, in terms of working with the body, we are not being taught. Like, I think we're not really understanding how amazing our body is from the time we're little children. Like, and I always talk about, our food becoming our body. Like, what's more important than what you're eating? It's literally becoming your body. And rather than a nuisance, it's actually allowing you to choose how you're going to nourish yourself and what's going to become your body, not just for now, but for next week and next, the next 10, 20, 30 years. And instead, a lot of the times, for example, I was just talking to a woman about heartburn, and it's just a nuisance. And I think I invite everyone to really shift that paradigm to the idea that these nuisances are actually messages from your body. And those messages change in perimenopause and menopause. And the body's giving us a different message because it needs to be heard in a different way. And I know that can sound kind of woo-woo, but the body is so intelligent. We don't have to do anything. Like, we eat, it becomes our body, we get rid of waste, our heart is beating, our blood is pumping. And when we can listen, like, it's trying to tell us something, that something is off underneath it. And when we look at some of these nuisances as something to just get rid of, we want to do the fastest thing to get rid of it instead of looking at, well, what's really going on in my body, and pausing and listening. And that's not something that is typical in our culture, because we're going and wanting a quick answer. And instead of being like, I'm sweating, like, why am I so hot? Like, what is hot in my body? What is needing to get out through this sweat, for example? So when you had shared with me earlier that you were having such night sweats that you actually had to get up and take a shower.
Yes. And change the sheets. They were totally drenched.
And I was just also speaking with a woman 8 to 10 times a night she was waking up. I mean, that's like more than every hour. So when you had a night's sleep like that, how was that changing your energy the next day, and also your mood and your disposition when you've had such a poor night's sleep?
Well, I think that that's a whole other topic, because I think sleep is so important, and we can get it can really affect our mood and our outlook. But I think having had children and being up and down all night with children, I get interrupted, not so much anymore, luckily. Now it's like finding my kids on screens in the middle of the night, right? They've unlocked the safe and gotten into the. But before it was, somebody was sick, somebody had a cough, somebody had a nightmare. So I think that, that part of it, luckily for me, I've never been that terrible when I'm sleep deprived. But it is, I think, the whole listening to the body is just understanding how we're not accultured, as you were saying. Like, society is not encouraging us to listen to our bodies, especially as women, and yet we have the magic ability to be able to regenerate an organ, and then to grow an organ if we are carrying and giving birth. We grow a placenta, we grow an organ that grows a baby inside of us. I mean, there's incredible things that the female biology really has, and yet we have had this view of ourselves, and also society's view of us as women, or how we were supposed to deal with those feminine aspects of our biology, that really plays into how we see ourselves too. I'm not hearing you, Marjorie. I don't know if the sound has gone off.
No, thank you. I muted myself because there was a plane outside.
Oh,
thank you. So how is this idea of what's coming up for women at this time of their life changing, contributing to the symptoms? So if we're treating these symptoms like a nuisance and we're pushing them away, and we're trying to feel differently about ourselves, how is that connecting? How is that having to do with how we're choosing to live our life?
Well, I think my training is I'm doing something called depth hypnosis and applied shamanic counseling now with clients, and the training is really based on some Buddhist philosophy, as well as other types of psychology and shamanic tools all mixed in. But the basis of Buddhist psychology is really that as humans we do suffer, right? We all suffer, um, and yet we sort of we have an ability to change the we're we have an ability to see how we suffer and to change that relationship to our suffering. And in yoga, we used to also hear about like the difference between pain and suffering. We exacerbate our suffering. So we have more pain when we have a relationship where we're belittling ourselves or not giving ourselves, not giving our body's symptoms sort of credence to be heard. So I really think that it really helps to stay curious instead of judgmental about what we're experiencing, and to not be comparing ourselves with what we were, and to know that society is really pressuring us to like stay young, look young, everything should stay, as it was when we were 19 or in our 20s. So I think that, I mean, I've heard from my acupuncturist that menopause is also known as the second spring for women. There's just so much capacity that we grow in our 40s and 50s and beyond. There's like the wisdom of having lived our lives, knowing ourselves better. We were joking before the call that, we start to care less about what people think about us. I mean, that there's the gifts of growing older are sort of all part of like carrying the wisdom that we have grown through our experiences, and that our bodies also carry that wisdom.
Yeah, it's, and in other cultures, there's so much honor and reverence given to the elders. And unfortunately, that is not the case here in the West, because everyone is, obsessed with being younger, and younger bodies being the norm. And I think it's changing a little bit. But what concerns me, and one of the reasons why I have this group and I do what I do, is that there's a feeling that that the best of their years are behind them. And some of that is how they look, and some of that is how they feel. And as soon as there are some aches and pains and the way that their body's changing, they're like, well, I guess that's it. And let's talk a little bit about how we can use this time to connect more with ourselves, and use these signs as a way to, well, this is going to be a new chapter of my life, and what do I want? And being able to embrace this idea of what we want, because we've been putting others first, whether it was our children, aging parents. Some people have both of those at the same time. And what we know is that the more we're ignoring ourselves and our own symptoms, it's not going to be a good trajectory. We have to put on our own oxygen mask first. And yes, it's a cliche, but I use it because it's true. And how can we be the best versions of ourselves for our families, communities, if we are not as healthy as we can possibly be, emotionally and physically?
Yeah, that's really, I mean, I think I think it's sort of like the symptoms I feel like are kind of somebody rattling our cage to say, you need to make me a priority. You need to make yourself a priority. And, my teacher, Isa Gucciardi, she really does talk about that. I think the first thing that we do in a class that she teaches called The Path of Service is to have us list our needs. And I can't even tell you, Marjorie, the first time I took the class, I repeated the class because it was that good. But the first time I took class, I couldn't even write down what my needs were. It was like, what are your mental needs? What are your physical needs? What are your emotional needs? What are your spiritual needs? I couldn't even write. It was so hard for me to say what my needs were. and to claim those as my needs. It was like, oh, well, I don't know, I'm not sure. And then I took the class a year later, and she was like, write down your needs. And I was like, blah, 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 blah. I had this list like a mile long of all of my needs. And it was funny because there was another woman who was like, I don't know, like I'm really having a really hard time. And my teacher Isa was like, Tracy, do you have your list to share? And it was like, oh, absolutely. I felt so happy that I'd had this evolution in the last year of after thinking about it and spending time and realizing the importance of claiming my needs for self-care, in every realm, that it really it was able to make me someone who was more present with others because I was taking care of myself. That oxygen mask had been put on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you say more about what that felt like to be more present for others?
Yeah, I think that when you fill your own tank first, right, then you have the excess or the extra energy to be able to pour into the people that you care about. And I think that I was kind of accustomed to just running on fumes and thinking that that wasn't that it wasn't okay to stop and take time for myself. So I think that was I think that I learned that, I don't know. I had another teacher who said you can either feel guilty or resentful. That was the two choices about taking care of yourself. And it was really, she's like, it's way better to feel guilty. Like if you have to choose between guilty and resentful, um, it's better to feel guilty. And I was like, okay, I can work with that as somebody who's kind of a codependent, right? And trying to break those habits of always taking somebody else's needs first. It was better for me to take care of my own needs and feel guilty about it until I learned that it was okay to do. And it was that, doing the thing that I didn't think I could do for myself, and then having my family's response not be what I had feared it would be, but to encourage me to do things for myself because they saw how happy it was making me, and then how much more present I was able to be when I was, with my kids, with my husband.
Yeah, I love that. And as we wrap up, we're also really modeling our behavior and how we live our life. So if our children, whether they're, our daughters see us, then they think that's what they have to do when they grow up, that they're always putting everybody else first because that's what they see. And if they're boys, then they think that that's what their partner might also be. They'll expect that. And so we're really modeling that behavior about claiming our own needs and recognizing that we're going to show up as the best version of ourselves and be the best model of ourselves too. So I think to wrap up, it's really about taking responsibility for yourself and owning that you deserve to live a full life and claim that and not be drawn down into like, oh, resentful that you can't take care of yourself because you're taking care of everybody else. And being like, okay, this is what I need to do to show up for everybody. Because otherwise your life is not going to be as enjoyable. You're not going to feel as happy. Like you're literally not going to feel as happy and generous and have the energy to be more present in the world and to contribute. And that's really why the reason that I created my program and this group is because it's not just one thing. Like, again, we talked about the quick fix, and there is no quick fix. We have to look at the underlying things and about taking care of ourselves, learning the tools to take care of ourselves, not just now through perimenopause and menopause, but beyond. So for anybody who is watching who would like more support about all of this, and you and I can talk in private message, I'm going to put a link underneath to my calendar, and you can book a free breakthrough session. You'll get a quick form to fill out, And then we can talk about how these symptoms of perimenopause and menopause are negatively affecting your life right now, and what you do want, and how you do want to feel, and you do want to live. And I'll let you what that will look like if we work together for a good fit. And I want to thank Tracy again, and please tell us more about how we can reach you.
Well, first, I just want to say, I mean, Marjorie, you're amazing. You know, I'm not just a good friend, but I am a huge fan of what you do. And anyone who is lucky enough to work with you is so well taken care of. You're just so smart and you're holding the biggest picture. And I know how much you want for your clients' well-being. So thank you for being in the world and doing the work that you do. And if there's anyone who would like to become more in touch with the patterns that they're seeing in their relationships and how to improve their relationships with themselves and with the others around them, they can go to my website, which is my full name, tracytoonspencer.com, and find out more about what I do and how I work with people and with women especially. I especially love working with women, and we share that as well. Just a heart for helping women just be their best selves and live their best lives, and really take care of themselves too.
Yeah. Well, everyone deserves to feel good, and the support is there. You are not alone. So I look forward to seeing you guys again. Tracy, I'd love to have you back. You and I could talk about so many things forever. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you.